This episode of The Candid Frame is sponsored by Fujifilm's latest collaboration with Frame.io, Camera to Cloud. With this innovative integration, you can now seamlessly transfer your images or videos directly from your Fujifilm camera to the web using C2C technology. To learn more about this exciting development, visit fujifilm-x.com and click on Camera to Cloud. I have a great appreciation for conversations with people who possess not only great ideas, but also the unwavering dedication to bring those ideas to life. There's something awesome about witnessing the transformation of a concept into a tangible creation through sheer passion and hard work. In the realm of photography, this quality of manifesting ideas is invaluable. It requires a unique set of qualities: vision, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to the craft. The ability to translate a vision into a captivating image takes time, effort, and an immense amount of dedication. Bob Patterson, the creator and editor of Street Photography magazine, epitomizes these essential qualities. Despite having no previous experience in publishing, he embarked on a journey to create and sustain a remarkable publication that explores the range and diversity of contemporary street and documentary photography. Bob's unwavering commitment to his craft is evident in the quality of Street Photography magazine, which has thrived under his leadership for over a decade. Through his keen eye and discerning taste, he has curated a unique voice within the photographic community, showcasing the work of talented street photographers and documentarians from all over the world. As we navigate our own creative journeys, let's draw some inspiration from individuals like Bob, who reminds us of the importance of nurturing our ideas and putting in the time and effort required to bring them to life. This is Ibarian X, and welcome back to The Candid Frame. Well, congrats on the magazine. when I saw that you've been around 10 years, I couldn't believe it. It was just like, but
me neither.
It goes by so quick.
It just flashes by.
Yeah.
Some days I wake up and I go, how the fuck did this happen? What the hell? Yeah, I turned 70 in 2 months.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Happens to all of us if we're lucky.
Because I was thinking, because I remember when, we had talked initially, I think when you had first started it.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago.
Yeah. And just to see that you had gone through, different iterations, and then you had, made a 10-year mark, especially with a magazine.
Yeah.
I think a podcast is one thing, because all I have to do is kind of like turn on a mic, get some editing software, and upload it. A magazine is no easy feat, even if you're not making a printed copy of it.
Yes.
And do you think that kind of not knowing what you were getting yourself into helped you to make it happen?
Yeah, definitely. I just did it to try out the software. I don't know if you've heard this story already, but
our guests haven't, so you should share it.
That's true. Yeah, I had a business. I was a web developer, and I worked mainly with people. I started back when we had the big economic meltdown, the mortgage crisis, and there were a lot of people. I was out of work, and so I started this web development business, and I dealt with a lot of people about my age. I was in my 50s and late 50s or mid 50s. I couldn't find a well-paying job, so I started my own business, and I dealt with a lot of people in my situation, former executives that wanted to become consultants or business coaches or whatever, and they wanted to be able to sell their services online. It was very new at the time. So I created websites for them to do online courses, which is now pretty ubiquitous. But So it was a lot of work putting these things together. And then I saw there was a magazine. It was called The Magazine on Apple. They had the Apple newsstand at the time. It doesn't exist anymore. It was called The Magazine. It's made by a guy named Marco Arment, who's a developer, one of the original creators of, I forget the name of the service. I'll come back to that. Anyway, so I saw that and go, that's cool. I went to school to be a journalist and broadcast journalism. I never went into it and always felt bad. I thought, gee, I can make my own magazine. So I got I got a license to do an app because the magazines that were for sale on the newsstand at the time were all, iOS apps. So I got this license and I went through training to learn how to use it and put it together. I said, now I have to make a magazine. What do I make the magazine on? I had two choices in my mind. Make one about membership site management. Now that's boring. I said, well, I could do one on street photography. I love doing street photography. And I could do that. But then I thought, who the hell am I to make a magazine about street photography? I'm just, I just do it for fun. But I did it. I thought, well, I'll do this for 6 months and see how it works. Because I wanted to use this magazine software for clients to do courses through an app rather than through a website. So I did it for a while, and the damn thing took off. It grew pretty fast. So I thought, well, I'll keep doing this. And 10 years later, I'm still doing it.
I asked the question because I feel that me not knowing what I was getting myself into helped me greatly in terms of starting a podcast. Because with both of us, we were adopting these new technologies that most people didn't really understand. And we were sort of drawn into it for similar reasons, that we wanted to sort of create something, in the form of content. And then we just figured it out. And because we didn't have anyone to really compare ourselves to, the usual thoughts and machinations that would deter us just really didn't exist.
No.
And so it was just about playing and figuring things out and having not just pleasure in terms of creating the content, but in learning something new.
I am curious as hell, and I love learning new things. And this was a big one. But, I agonized over it for several months. I told you this once before, but you probably forgot. And I said, dude, who am I to do this, right? I'm not that good of a photographer. I'd see so much good work out there, but, I don't match many of those people. And one day I was painting our kitchen. I was listening to a podcast, and it was an episode where you were on by yourself. And you talked about how I think it was like episode 278, something like that. And you were talking about how you struggle with self-doubt and maybe imposter syndrome. I don't know if you use that term. And how you work through it. And I thought, yes, he's right. And that was the tipping point to get me started.
Oh, wow.
So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
It was huge. I've recommended that episode to many people.
That's great. I was just listening to a conversation with Rick Rubin, who's like a famous sort of music producer.
Yeah.
And he has a book on creativity. And in the interview, he was talking about creativity, the differences in terms of creativity as expressed by children as opposed to adults.
Aha, yes.
And the idea is that children don't know what they don't know. And they don't know about the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. And the creativity that kind of comes out of them really sort of taps into this. If you imagine creativity as being, some sort of like energy that surrounds us, children are able to sort of tap into it and make things, and they're not concerned with how good it is or whether people are going to like it or whether it's going to make any money. They just create. And then adults, they start qualifying.
Yeah.
All of those things that they're trying to do, and it stifles the creativity or it stops it cold. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is that I think it's a story that's really important for people to listen to hear, because especially for those of us that are older, over 50, the idea of being able to do something creative, to do something that drives us, can be burdened by all these sort of qualifications, all these justifications as to why we can't do it. Oh, it's like, it's too hard to learn, I'm too old, whatever it is. And the fact that you started it when you did, and that despite all the sort of technical challenges and all the things you had to learn, that you kind of persevered and have made this a thing that so many people enjoy. How much, in the spirit of that, how much do you think being able to sort of tap into that kind of creativity, as opposed to something where, with the photography, you have so many things you can compare yourself to.
Yeah.
Right? And it can be sluggish progress with that. But with producing the magazine, it's another form of creativity, but it wasn't hampered by the potential for all that negative self-talk. So if you compare that, what do you think about that comparison?
I've never thought about it that way, but that's true. Since I had no experience with it, I didn't know what could go wrong. Like what you were talking about before, about children being able to be creative. I remember reading an article somewhere about intelligent people. Not that I'm smart by any means, but they have a harder time making decisions and moving forward because they have the imagination to think of everything that can go wrong. And say, well, I better not do that because this could happen or that could happen. And it holds us back. But I think just not having any memory of anything that could have gone wrong with something that's so new frees you up to move forward.
So tell me about producing that first issue. What was involved in making that happen?
Well, I was on a completely different platform at the time. It was called Magcast. And it was pretty clunky because you had to make a PDF of every article and then upload that to the system. And then you had to go in and this is physically making. You had to go in and add links and things, and it was a lot of work, a lot of manual work, and we had no content. Nobody knew who the magazine is. It never existed before, and early on, we basically had to beg for content. Contact people, spent all this time. You probably went through the same thing with the podcast, getting people to come on. Luckily, I had some contacts because of a course I took. And I'm going to get back to this course because it involves you again. Maybe you keep popping up. You're like Forrest Gump, I think. But so I took a course, an online course on Better Photo years ago about street photography, and I got to know this group of people, a guy named Joe Wigfall, a few other people. And then after the course ended, we decided to create Joe wanted to create a Flickr group. And this is like 2006, something like that. So we created a Flickr group, and some of the people from the course came on. So when I started the magazine, the first thing I did was reach out to some of the better photographers from that group, and which helped get the ball rolling. So it was just me at the time. We spent a lot of time just trying to find content. That was the hardest thing. And then putting it all together was tedious, very tedious and time consuming.
When you initially put the idea out there, what was the response? Not just in terms of this community of photographers, but your family and friends.
Family and friends is like, what are you doing? Don't you have enough to do? You've got this business that's keeping you busy. So that was the big one. And, of course, a lot of people, friends, well, I'm doing this magazine. What's it called? Street Photography Magazine. What's that? Do you go out and take pictures of streets? You've probably heard that one. So it's a lot easier today, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, because you've been through several different iterations in terms of how you make the magazine and how you sort of distribute. But,
yeah.
There's so many things. I mean, one, you started because your interest was sort of piqued because of this new technology, this, this tablet, this computer you could hold in the palm of your hand. And so there's the technology part, but the other part of making a good magazine is about the content. It's like, what's it going to look like? What are the articles going to read like? Are they going to be like a question and answer? Are they going to be interviews? Or, all that stuff. How did you sort of figure that out? Because like you said, you were already very busy enough, and inevitably there's a whole lot of research that has to go into learning how to do this thing properly. So, what was your sort of game plan, if there was one, for figuring all that out?
Yeah, there really wasn't a game plan. I had already taught myself web development, taught myself PHP and then HTML and CSS, all that stuff that goes into the back end of websites. I did WordPress. And so I'd already been through that, and I just jump in and do it. And when I hit a brick wall or an obstacle, well, you just have to find a way around that obstacle, and that means learning new things. Well, I love to learn new things. So it was actually fun. It still is. So it's I just looked at it as just like one series of obstacles after another, just to overcome. And some things work and some things don't. But you got to put one foot in front of the other. And like you say, when you don't know what you're getting into, you just let it happen.
There's a term used in podcasting called pod fading.
Yes.
And
done that.
Yeah, me too. But luckily I kind of recovered from it. But it's this sort of tendency where there's a lot of enthusiasm for the creation of the podcast, and people spend all this time and effort figuring it out, putting out episodes. And then, after about like 10 episodes, they kind of go, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of peters out, and then it just sort of disappears into the ether. And for me, there were moments where I almost sort of pod faded.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but
sure.
I came back to it because there was something about the conversations I was having and in creating something from them and putting it out in the world that I felt I couldn't do without. And that helped me to push through that, especially during times where I didn't have enough time, or I didn't have enough money, or was struggling to get somebody on the show. What was it for you that kept you moving forward, even when a bunch of valid excuses started coming up for you to stop doing it? Yeah.
Well, I did pod fade a couple of times because I created some other podcasts before that. Yeah, what kept me going? It's like any accomplishment. Half of it is just showing up. You just have to keep showing up. And a former client of mine, a friend of mine, is a bodybuilder. And he was a competitive bodybuilder. He's in his 50s now. But that's what he said. He said the people who are really champions, they show up. They go to the gym every day, whether they want to or not. They roll out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you just keep going. But like you said you were getting something out of it that kept you going. I think for me, man, you ask really good questions. I've got to.
Thanks.
I always say you're the best interviewer in American media, but yeah, why did I keep doing it? I think I got a charge out of getting to know some very creative people, and I wanted. Personally, it was a personal journey for me. I wanted to become a better photographer, and what better way than to talk to people who are more experienced than yourself, particularly when we started doing interviews. I went to college to be a broadcast journalist. I worked in radio during college, and I was always upset with myself. I never pursued that as a career, and this gave me an opportunity to do that. And Early on, we started doing audio interviews, actually from from issue number 1. I almost always interviewed people, just like we're doing right now. And I really like that. I like being able to make the connection. I'm very comfortable talking to people. At the time, it was on the phone or on, I can't even remember the name of the service. The one thing to replace the telephone that Microsoft owns now.
Skype.
Skype, yeah. Thank you. Started Skype. I heard you the other day on a podcast, and you said you were very shy when you were young, but you weren't shy when you carried a camera around. Mm-hmm. I'm also very shy, but I'm not shy on the phone. I don't know why, but I'm not shy on the phone. So I like talking to people on the phone, and later, of course, I like talking to them on Zoom. And I got some kind of rush out of that, I guess, and that kept me going. I really enjoy talking to people, and the challenge of being able to carry on an interesting conversation for an hour or so. Don't always do that, but so that's probably what kept bringing me back.
That's something we both have in common. Not just sort of the shyness, but that sort of that early interest in journalism.
Mm-hmm.
That there was something about that one felt very empowering, especially to someone who was shy.
Yeah.
And sort of this feeling that, oh man, I wish I had done more with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow we've both sort of recreated what we thought we had lost.
Yeah.
In our own enterprise. And we get to do the very thing we were kind of inspired to do, but we're not having to follow somebody else's rule book.
Yeah, you do it in your own terms.
Yeah, which is so gratifying.
Yeah, and one of my big heroes as a child was my grandfather. He was a journalist. He was the editor of the Kokomo Tribune in Kokomo, Indiana.
Oh, wow.
He was one of these tough old guys. He could type like 100 words a minute with 2 fingers, and he smoked like a fiend, Camel non-filter cigarettes, a tough guy. And then when he retired, he was publisher of this newspaper. He started his own newspaper in a small town. He had the first offset press in the state of Indiana. And so he ran that. He was, until he died. And he used to take us there as kids, and we'd make our own newspapers. They had, back in those days, they'd take all the type and lay it out, physical lead type, and they lay it out in this big frame thing, and then roll ink over it and print these pages to proof them. And so he let us play with that, and my sister and I would make up our own newspapers and things, and I just loved it. And I think that's what got me started. And then as I got older and I went to college, I like technology, I like TV and radio, so I got into broadcast journalism. But I didn't do it, like you said, but it's always been in the back of my head. Well, now I'm doing it. Now I'm a journalist, and my beat is street photography or documentary photography or whatever.
So what do you think prevented you from doing it when you were younger? Well,
it's money, for one. I graduated from college with a degree from Ohio University in their Scripps School of Journalism, and I set out to get into radio. Moved to Cleveland, that's where my wife was from, and it was really hard to get a job. We were in the middle of a recession. I needed to make money. Got into sales, started with Motorola, and got to make a living. Radio didn't pay anything, and you really had to move around a lot. My wife, being a Clevelander, Cleveland people, they don't like to leave. So we stayed there, and I got some nice jobs. They got better and better. Became president of a company, and you know how it is. You just get caught up in your career, raising a family. Both my kids were journalists as well.
Yeah. I think your son's a documentary photographer. Is that right?
Well, he went to Ohio University. Also, he's a photojournalist, and worked for a year, and that's for a year in a small newspaper. And then that's when all the newspapers started laying off back around 2008. He went back to school. He's just graduated 2 weeks ago. He's a mechanical engineer now.
Oh, wow.
And he's still one hell of a photographer.
But it seems like it's in your genes in that family.
It is. Yeah, my daughter was a journalist. She left college and went to China for 4 or 5 years as a journalist. 21 years old, didn't speak the language or know a soul. That's guts.
Oh, that's awesome. But I think, regardless of, I don't have any children, but I would imagine that one of the things is that you want your kids to have a good life, to be able to make a living and to have a happy life. But I think you likely have to have some sense of pride that your children were so bold.
Yes. I couldn't believe it that she wanted to go there after college. And we dropped her off at the airport in June or something. And then we went to visit her in China in the following May. And it was so strange walking around with her with this funny language coming out of her mouth. Completely self-taught. But it was a cool experience.
So in terms of the magazine, you use the terms street photography, documentary photography. Street photography is often considered sort of a branch of documentary photography.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
And because, it's your magazine and you can choose who you get to showcase on it. When you started thinking about who you wanted to reach out to publish in the magazine, and you have this umbrella term of street photography, how would you consider people, and how has that changed over the last 10 years?
It's changed a lot. I keep saying we. It's we now, by the way, and I've got to give a shout out to our editor, Ashley, before we go here, because she really just makes this thing go for sure. I guess I'm trying to remember. I was on Flickr, and Flickr still does have a very rich street photography community. So I wanted early on to focus on people who were not super famous, because there's just so many great photographers out there. Nobody knows about it. Reminds me of the movie 20 Feet from Fame, if you ever saw that, which is about the backup singers in the rock scene. And they're all like just amazing vocalists, but they're just 20 feet away from the front of the stage to be famous. And any one of them could be famous if the right things happen. Same thing with photography. So I reached out to some people on Flickr, just did a lot of research online, looking up different street photographers, and then we'd reach out, invite people. Oftentimes we'd hear crickets. Don't hear many crickets now, which is really good. Reached out to some people that I reached out to you. You were a very early interview for us. Just, I think anything that resonated with me, anybody who did work that I thought was strong, we would reach out to. How does that happen today? Many people are now knocking on our door, and so we have to, we have to say no a lot, which I'm sure you do as well. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and we see somebody good on any of those sites, I'll reach out and ask them. We also, sorry, I'm just trying to think. I don't even think about this stuff. I just do it. So, but sometimes, people reach out to me and I'll look up their stuff and see what I think and invite them or not invite them. Many people who have already contributed to the magazine, because not only do we feature people submit articles to us. So if somebody has been active and they've sent us several articles and they're really good, we want to give them a platform to tell their story personally. So many of the people you see as our featured photographers, will be people who have contributed to the magazine in some way. People who just send me a link saying, hey, look at my stuff, probably don't get too far. I can't imagine how many of those things you get.
Oh, yeah. I get a lot. It's for some reason the last 2 years, it's It's amazing how many solicitations I get. And, some of them ended up on the show, but the nature of things for me, especially since I kind of pulled back and stopped doing the show every week and do it pretty much every other week, is that there are less slots that I can fill. So I have to really kind of think about, what the season is going to shape up. I think that the last 8 years, I would say, they have been people that I put on the list that I didn't get to until years later.
Yeah, same here.
It's like 3 or 4 years later, I'll look through the list and I go, oh, yeah, let me get this person on. Just because I think it's not just that it's an appropriate time, but I think that they would be a good fit considering who's already been on the show and what's coming forward. And there's some people that I just enjoy talking to, and I'll have them back on the show just because I enjoy the conversation. So all of that sort of factors into, okay, of all the people who I have to consider every year, how many end up appearing on the show? If things change to the point where this is all that I'm doing and I'm no longer, working a 9 to 5 and I'm earning enough revenue to be able to dedicate more time to this, then going weekly is something I really would love to be able to do. And I know that not everyone listens to every episode, but man, every time I sit down to have a conversation, it's often the best part of my day. I'm really looking forward to sitting down and talking with someone. It's just so, it's a rarity in my normal day to day.
Same here. I find it energizing.
Yeah.
Just, especially when you have somebody really interesting on. Sometimes you have to draw them out. Mm-hmm. And that can be difficult. I haven't had too many, but some people surprise me. I wind up connecting with somebody. I go, I don't know about, should I do this or not?
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, that was a great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because there's some people who have, like you, I'm showcasing not only people who are like well known and master photographers,
sure, yeah,
but people that I don't even have a lot of information from. So I can't do like a normal deep dive in terms of researching them. I just kind of go, it looks like I like the work and I think they have an interesting story and I'm just going to roll the dice. And then at the end of it, I'm going, wow. And I love moments like that. And I can't wait for the episode to get out there because I know it's going to resonate with people.
Yeah. Yeah. You've had a lot of those. Over the years, I boxed myself into a corner photographically because I think, okay, I've got this street photography magazine. All I should do as a photographer is street photography. Mm-hmm. And I'd stayed in that trap for quite a while. And then I realized, that's not all I want to do. I mean, we're all photographers, right? One of the things that got me thinking about that was a show you did not long ago with Anouk Krantz, the woman who photographs the cowboys. And it's funny, I was pitched on having her on because she did a book, and you get a lot of people reaching out and wanting their authors to come on. And I didn't do anything with it. And then I listened to her on your show and I go, well, she told a great story. She was a good storyteller, telling about how she worked with all these cowboys. And I'm thinking, I wasn't even going to listen to it. Horses, what do I care about horses? And, she told such a good story and just seemed like the coolest person. I looked up her website and I saw her photographs of these horses and the cowboy photos. I bought the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She owes you a commission for that. I bought the book. And it's a wonderful book. I live in horse country. I don't know if I moved to Central Virginia several years ago. Big time horse country. And I've got several friends who are really into horses, so I keep showing them this book. I go, you got to see this thing. Just amazing work. It's something completely different from anything I do or will ever do. Man, I've really taken this in a different direction. I'm sorry about that.
Hey, like I said earlier, this is podcasting. It can go anywhere.
That's true. That's true. Let's talk about camping. No,
but, the idea of adding a podcast to what you're already doing with respect to the magazine Why? I mean, as if you couldn't make your life any more complicated than it already was.
Yeah, I did it because it's a good way to promote the magazine. We have no advertisers, and that's on purpose. Sometimes I question that decision, as you know. But I do it to get some eyeballs on the magazine, and I just love to do it. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, I just get energy from the conversations. Doesn't take that long. I do have somebody who edits it. When I try to edit it myself, I hate listening to myself, and I hate my hillbilly isms. I grew up in the hills of Southern Ohio. And again, I'm comparing myself to other people. So I had to get somebody to edit it. So that really frees me up. I love doing it. And I think if I ever stopped doing the magazine, I'd still keep doing the podcast.
You know, one of the things that I when I'm teaching, what I'm trying to teach in almost all my workshops is sort of the mindset. Getting into a space where you can sort of tap into that creativity and be able to return to it over and over again. And, you know, you said initially that you started the magazine as a means of improving your skills as a photographer. And tell me, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but the thinking there going, I'm going to talk to all these photographers and I'm going to learn what they do and I'm going to apply it to my own work and I'll become a better photographer. But I suspect that the act of creating the magazine and the podcast, that in itself has likely taught you some things that you've been able to apply to your photography. What would you say those things are?
Well, I have to think about that one. Just the act of creating a magazine, what's it done for my photography? I think it's caused me to slow down and think more. I don't take as many photographs. I think it's helped me in my composition more as well. You ever see the movie Steve Martin made? And I can't remember the name of it, but he was in, there was a scene where he was like in Germany and he gets pulled over by the police and they put him through a test, DUI test.
Yes.
You ever see this scene?
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
Okay, and then so they're having him walk the line in the middle of the road, and then they're having him like put his finger on his nose and jump on one foot, and then they have him do cartwheels, and Steve Martin stops and says, "Gee, your drunk tests are hard." That's just like your questions. And so to say, I'm not real sure I mean, it has, but I can't really articulate how it's helped my photography. Yeah.
Let me rephrase that then.
Okay.
Were you a perfectionist and in producing the magazine make you less so?
Yes. Sometimes you just have to abandon things and say they're good enough, because I am a perfectionist, which gets in my way in many ways. And, you know, we have deadlines. And when the deadline comes, you just got to pull the trigger and move forward. And it's caused me to stop being such a perfectionist. It's caused me to spend less time tweaking little things that probably nobody else notices.
Yeah. And one of the things I've learned from my own show, because I'm a perfectionist as well, and that has stifled me, not only in terms of the podcast, but a lot of other creative efforts. That desire to try to make it perfect and make it right the first time, which is completely absurd and antithetical to the whole creative process. But what I learned was, even with episodes that I felt were lackluster or just completely sucked, or that I just felt didn't work, I would often get a response from people who saw a gem in there that they really appreciated, which gave me a sense that I am not the best judge and arbiter of the very things that I'm creating.
It's only you. It's only what's in between your ears.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's has sort of freed me from this chokehold of perfectionism. It hasn't I haven't completely gotten rid of it, but it gives me a healthy perspective about what I think this thing is, what it's meant to be, and how much of my hand is actually on it.
Does that happen with your photography as well?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I think that's one of the harder ones to sort of completely be free with, because I think with the photography, I know what photographs I'm good at creating, that I can go to and repeatedly create without any problem. And that involves me being very in control of what I'm doing in terms of composition, my observations of lighting, line, shape, moment, all of those things. And they have allowed me to be very consistent. But the thing that's often missing from that is a certain sense of spontaneity, chaos. And when I see it in other people's work, I go, oh, God, I want that. But the thing is, I have to let go and not necessarily not make the photographs that I'm used to making, but finding some way to put that aside and just say, just play, just risk making the bad photographs. And I have techniques to do that. You know, I'll hold the camera away from me. I won't look at the viewfinder. I'll just jet the camera out on the scene and press the button, not caring whether the horizon line is going to be parallel to the camera, or that it's going to be slightly blurred, or I'm going to be cutting something off, or purposely using a slow shutter speed so that the image is not sharp, so that it's purposely blurred. Because when I do those things, I don't know what I'm going to get, and I'm often surprised. And I've learned that because I've given those assignments to my students, and it makes them incredibly uncomfortable. And inevitably, they produce images that are so exceptional, that are so exciting, so original, that it reminds me, oh, I need to follow my own advice and get into that space. But it's hard when you know too much.
Yeah. I think it pays to have the memory of a flea sometimes.
and it stresses the importance of limitations.
Yeah. Going back to your question that I didn't answer before, but you just reminded me of this, is I've needed to spend more of my focus or my energy on making photographs for myself that I like, and forget about making anything that I think other people would prefer. And I got that basically from working through the magazine and working on the magazine, and didn't realize that before. For example, I started a personal project photographing the jazz scene in our community. I live in a college town, Charlottesville. 2 of your former interviewees live in my area, but I'll tell you that later. Anyway, I wanted to get to know these people and photograph their lives, not just on stage, but, rehearsing and just living their lives. So we have a very rich community of musicians in this town. So I started doing that. I'd get invited to come to rehearsals and things, and they just shot the way I wanted, just using my own vision. And then I got invited to photograph for the local jazz society, which has given me access to concerts and venues and things. And I started doing that. And then I'd make the photos. I go, or when I'm shooting, I go, they probably want something like this, or they probably want something like that. I was doing it all in monochrome. I said, well, I better shoot some color because they're going to want color. Next thing I know, I'm not doing what I want. I'm doing what I think they want, which may not be true. I go, wait a minute. I have to stop that. So I did.
Did you have a similar experience when you were producing the magazine?
Yeah, definitely. I think I find if we do things, I'm going to say we this time because Ashley, our editor, puts as much or more time into it as I do. And so we're just picking things we like, things that resonate with us. And we both have different tastes, so that helps. And, not just things to fill the pages, but stuff that I learned from that has made a difference to me. Hopefully I'm not passing up things that could make differences to other people. But, and like with those jazz photos, the ones that I really like that made a difference to me, people really seem to like. And the things I shoot that I think other people need, not so great.
In the midst of our busy lives, it's easy to overlook the significance of creativity. But let me tell you, it's an essential part of who we are. When we neglect our creative side, we deny ourselves a fundamental aspect of our being. We need to make a conscious effort to nurture that part of ourselves from which creativity blossoms. For me, nurturing my creativity means immersing myself in the arts. I find solace in reading books, exploring captivating photography, and engaging in conversations with fellow artists. These experiences invigorate my spirit and ignite my imagination. They provide the fuel that keeps my creativity alive and thriving. If you share my passion for creativity and believe in the power of artistic expression, I invite you to become a Patreon supporter of the Candid Frame today. By supporting the podcast, you not only ensure its continued existence, but also enable countless others to benefit from the enriching conversation it brings. Your contributions help create a space where creativity thrives and meaningful connections are forged. To become a Patreon supporter, simply visit patreon.com/The Candid Frame. There you can choose from various support tiers starting from just $5 per month. Your generosity makes a significant impact in sustaining this valuable resource for artists and creatives all around the world. Join the community of Patreon supporters and be a part of the Candid Frame's mission to inspire, uplift, and empower artists everywhere. Visit patreon.com/The Candid Frame and become a supporter today. But I think being an editor, being a sort of a podcaster, that one of the things that I think makes the things that we produce unique and not as cookie cutter as some other content is there is that we are allowing our own tastes and sensibilities and interests and passions sort of manifest itself in all the different choices that we're making. And I think that is really at the heart of making something that, even though it is incredibly personal, becomes universal. I mean, that may be a little bit of a sort of a cliche, but I think there's something that's very true to that. And I think that the creation of something and then putting it out into the world provides that. But in today's world, there are people who do not hesitate with their criticism, right? Especially in the word of Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. You can't help but be curious about those responses. Yeah. And I had my way of sort of dealing it, but I wonder for you, what that was like and how you contended with it.
To deal with criticism?
Yeah. Especially about something you're doing that you're so personal and you're so passionate about.
God, everybody loves it so much. I've never had to deal with that. No. It's hard. For me, it's very hard. I'm a pleaser, and that can be tough when you're dealing with the general public. And I can't say it doesn't bother me sometimes. I remember hearing somebody on a podcast once, they had all these people give him accolades for whatever it was that he did. But he gets one complaint and he can't sleep at night.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's tough. It's that memory of a flea thing again. You just have to, I think you just have to put it behind you. I spent many years in senior level management and had to deal with lots of complaints and criticism especially in large corporations. It comes at you from all sides. And I think, I guess, like I said before, I know it's what I like and what I feel strongly about. And, you're welcome to your opinion. I'm welcome to mine. And just move on.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really helps is the fact that you don't have advertisers that you have to sort of cater to. Because I worked in the magazine industry for 8 years, so it was the advertisers were how the magazine came out. It wasn't so much the subscribers; it was all the people and so much of the content, unfortunately, sometimes was influenced by the advertisers.
Sure,
which was frustrating for me because it felt a little. I don't know what the right word is for it, but it's not a good word, whatever it is.
Keep it clean, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I understand sort of the need for it, especially now. I mean, in order for me to be able to do it in the way that I want to do it, listener support in and of itself is not enough, But one of the things that I sort of adhere to is that this show remains the show that I've always wanted it to be, and it's not going to be changed for the same as with advertisers. But you made a purposeful decision not to do that.
Yeah.
Was that one of the reasons, or were there other reasons why you decided not to solicit advertising for the show? Not just the show being the magazine.
Yeah, 2 reasons. One, I don't want to be influenced by camera manufacturers or lens manufacturers or software people or whatever. So just like you, I want it to be what I want it to be. And number 2, it's a lot of work. We did solicit a sponsor once a few years ago, and we put together a package deal. It was somebody who has a website, a photography website platform, which was very good, by the way. So we worked, we put together a package where, we'd have an article about them, an interview and all that. And it was a ton of work. The money was nice, but I couldn't see myself doing that every month for them or somebody else. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you find it to be a lot of work. I think the advertisers you have are a really good fit for what you do. And I assume you're really genuine about your what you say about them. But it's just a lot of extra work, and we've got enough work to do already. So, I come out of the subscription business anyway. I spent most of my career as a senior manager and executive in the cable TV business, which is always driven by subscriptions. So when I started the magazine, it was just an extension of what I've done almost my entire career, was build a business around basically what the subscribers want.
Yeah. Like for me, and especially now, because I'm considering making some outreach, but one of the things that has always been a priority for me is I always wanted the support of people or businesses who believed in the mission and believed in what I was doing, and not just looked at the show as, oh, he has an audience, and we want to tap into that. And I've said no to a bunch of different things that just,
I bet you have.
That just were not a good fit, or people who I, just from their initial emails, I realized they had never listened to the show.
Yeah.
And that's in the form of people who want to be guests and people who want to advertise. It's like, you have no idea what we do. And those are easy to sort of write off. Yeah. But there's a certain possessiveness and protectiveness about it that I have, and I think that you have as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I like that you brought on Frames Magazine. They do a wonderful job. Yeah. I've met Tomasz, and I was a big fan of Fuji Love. Still am, actually. And I was glad to see him expand. Good, smart businessman. I think a real good fit for you.
One of the smart things that you did was bring on someone else to help you. And you've mentioned Ashley a couple of times. So
I got lucky. Yeah.
I'd wish I'd done it earlier myself. I have Martin, who edits the show for me, and he's been doing it for quite a long time. And he is He's a much better editor than I will ever be, and he saves me so much grief and time that I spent editing the show myself, because I can't listen to some of the earlier episodes because I feel like I've just screwed up the engineering of the sound on those things terribly. But tell me about your collaboration with her in making the show happen. How did it come about? Because she was in South America.
She was,
Yeah, when you first started working with her.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about technology today. Yeah, I think she's been working for me for 9 years, maybe 8 years. It's been a long time. Yeah, our editor is Ashley Refo. And she's from Florida, living in Florida again, which is really helpful. And we had never met each other in person until this past February.
Wow.
I live in Virginia. She lives in Florida. And we were supposed to meet last year. We went down, my wife and I went to Florida for a few weeks just to get out of the semi-cold we have here. And we went last year, and we had planned to meet with Ashley and her husband for dinner. We stayed in St. Augustine. Wouldn't you know it, she was like 8.5 months pregnant and couldn't quite make it that day. So we had to wait. So we did it again this year. So that was really cool to finally meet her in person. I feel like she's like a second daughter, you know. But we met. I mean, I hired her through an online support site, and she was a writer, and I brought her in to just help proof articles and things. And as we went along, you know, she's extremely talented and one of the smartest people I ever met. And the thing you need to do when you hire somebody to support you is get somebody that's good at things you're not good at.
Right.
And she definitely is that. You know, we used to publish. Our publishing schedule was pretty random. Early on, we actually missed a couple of months. But when she came in, she suggested we publish on the same day every month, which we started and haven't stopped. But anyway, she came in as really more of a proofreader. And when I saw how talented she was, eventually made her the editor. She's a hell of an interviewer, too. She's, if you've ever listened to any of the episodes or primarily interviews, feature interviews, she's really, really good, very thoughtful. So she makes it a lot better. She keeps me in line.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons I've kind of learned about creating something, especially over the long term, that at some point you have to realize that you can't do it alone, that it's just not sustainable. And it can't really grow if it's all on your shoulders and you're sort of doing everything.
Yeah, because you can only do so much. And you need space to think about things and to get creative in terms of just business problem solving and coming up with new ideas. And if you're just grinding it out every day, doing all the day-to-day tactical stuff, you know, what you're doing is you're working in the business, not on the business. And she's freed me up to spend more time working on the business as well.
You've kept the price of the subscription really modest on this magazine. And
really?
Yeah.
I'm raising the price. Thank you.
Yes, you don't have to deal with print costs, but most of it is just your time, you and Ashley's time in being able to put this, you know, sort of put this out there. I know you want to make it sort of accessible and available, but still, you and Ashley deserve to be compensated for the amount of time that you put in there. But tell me how you sort of figured it out. You know, what considerations do you have to make to keep it where it is and not increase it or come up with all these sort of different options and add-ons and stuff like that in order to increase revenue?
Yeah, we don't do that yet. Initially, one of the plans was to use the magazine as a vehicle to grow a user base and an audience, and then sell them other services, workshops, online training. And we've done that a bit over the years. I haven't spent as much time on that as we wanted to, and that's why it's low. Started out at $1.99 a month. You know, the whole method, called the PFA method, for pricing, which stands for pluck from air, which is or a swag, sophisticated wild ass guess. Yeah, we did raise the monthly price, and sometimes I wonder about that. I mean, because when you think about, we charge $6.99 a month, 44 or $6.95. I can't even remember. $6.99 a month, $44.99 per year, and we have to look at things like Netflix, Apple TV Plus. What do you pay for those? And people compare that. Gee, I'm paying $7 a month for this magazine. I'm paying the same price for Apple TV Plus when I get all these movies and TV shows and things. So that makes it a little tough. So we have to compete with that, and we have to compete with other magazines. We're in the same price range as other magazines in the same, genre. And but we do need to offer more services. Not really add-ons and bolt-ons, but other options. We did do Harvey Stein did street photography online course during the pandemic for us, and that went over very well. I should do it myself, but then again, it's like, who the hell am I? What can I teach anybody? So maybe I should go back and listen to your podcast 278 again.
I feel the same way. Even though I teach, I still feel that same way.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. That because you're exposed to all these amazing photographers, and you think, my God, I'm not as good as Sam Abel.
It's really weird. It's like, I know I'm an exceptional teacher. Mm-hmm. Not just because of what I'm teaching in terms of the photographic practice, but what I bring out from the people who study with me. Mm-hmm. Because I almost always see a transformation, whether I'm spending 2 days or a week with them. And for me, that part of it is why I love doing it. The sort of imposter thing is not so much that I'm not as good a photographer as that, but I feel like it's hard for me to sort of promote, you should spend time with me because I'm me. Mm-hmm. Because that's basically what it comes down to. And it's like, who am I to say that?
Yeah.
But it's like, part of me knows it's true, because every time I see the evaluations for the courses I get, and I see the comments, and I get the feedback, and people tell me how transformative it was. There's a woman who just recently got published in Lenswork magazine, who took one of the workshops that I was doing during COVID, where it was about using your personal life to produce a project. And because everybody was home, you had to use your own life to do it. And she did. She focused on her mom, who was in decline due to dementia. And it was like really powerful work in the class. And
man.
She continued working on it until her mom passed. And she put together a portfolio of the work, and it got published in Lenswork, and she sent it to me. And it was like one of the most gratifying things I'd ever experienced as a teacher, to see that. Because I remembered some of the work she had created in class, and then I got to see in the publication what else she had made of it. And it was so moving and so touching. And I felt a huge sense of gratitude that I helped to facilitate that. Because I really didn't do a whole lot in terms of teaching. I just created a space to encourage people to do things that they were uncomfortable with, and to see what they could discover as a result. And when I sit down to sort of like market that, I have a hard time figuring out how can I feel inadequate, and I feel awkward about conveying that in marketing ease or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. That doesn't sound pretentious.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, there's so many pretentious people out there selling snake oil that it's easy to get mixed up with them. But I know how you feel about teaching, because there's nothing like having somebody tell you how you've made a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong martial artist, although I haven't done much since we moved because my school's back in Cleveland. But there was a group of us. I mean, we were together for 30 years. So we had a lot of kids, young kids, come to our school, and they would go through it from being a little kid up to adulthood. And one night after class, this young guy comes up. He's like in his early 30s now, and he goes, I just got to tell you. He comes from a family, his parents broke up when he was young. He goes, I just got to tell you, the things you've taught me over the years, not just in terms of fighting or those kind of skills, you just made such a difference in my life. I just have to thank you. I couldn't even talk. I said, wow, I didn't even respond to him until a couple of years later.
Wow.
And that's such a gas. And that's true in any kind of training. So that's amazing. You get to feel that on a regular basis.
And do you feel like you're doing that with the magazine?
Sometimes. I did hear from somebody just last week or the week before saying, you've been such an inspiration. And I go, wow, I never thought about that. Maybe the people that we put in the magazine are an inspiration, but me too? That's fabulous. It felt great.
Yeah, I think you are. You are. For me, you are. And I know that for a lot of other people. Yeah, absolutely. I may have sort of helped to trigger what you're doing, but when I see what you've done, because the idea of creating a magazine and sustaining it over 10 years and producing this, this tangible thing, granted virtually, but still this sort of tangible thing that serves to inform, educate, inspire, and entertain people. I think it can be underrated, and it's easy for us to undervalue it because we're the one who's making the sausage, right?
That's right. I see, and I put a little too much sage in that time.
Yeah, but as consumers of other kinds of content, we've had the experience where reading a book or seeing a film or something has just touched us and moved us in ways that the creator couldn't ever have imagined. So I think we kind of have to both sort of remember that what we do is likely serving that role for people who we will never meet and will never hear from.
Yeah, because most people don't reach out. You just don't hear from them. I mean, I don't reach out when I hear a great podcast episode from somebody or read a great book. So I'm sure most people don't. Most people don't write bad reviews on Yelp or good reviews on Yelp unless they want to get famous themselves. Who knows? Oh, I do need to tell you one other thing here.
Okay.
Why I took a street photography online course. And that's probably the first time I even knew what street photography was. But you used to teach classes on Better Photo years ago. I signed up for a class of yours, and it was portraiture. And I'm looking at this. Who is this guy? I was trying to pronounce your name. I go, okay, well, all right, who is this guy? And I read the syllabus. It was ready to start. And you listed everything that you were teaching. And one of the classes was about going out in the field and making portraits of strangers. I don't even know if you remember this.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And I read that, and I broke into a cold sweat. Because after all, I'm shy, right? Mm-hmm. I said, you know what? I don't think I'm ready for that. So I canceled and I signed up for another class on street photography with, I forget their first name, the Silvermans.
Oh, yeah. Neil and Susan.
In San Francisco.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, they happened to be, they were former photojournalists for the Cleveland Plain Dealer where I lived. And so I took their class, and that's where I met up with all these other people who eventually became some of my first subjects in the magazine. And again, if it wasn't for you, in two different ways.
I just keep showing up.
You just do, just like Forrest Gump, like I said.
I'm often asked, what are your favorite interviews? What's your favorite interview? Or who has been your favorite guest? And it's not a question that I can answer. Because sometimes people will ask me, have you interviewed this person? I have to go into my own website and go, because I can't remember. It's so many
600 plus? 600 plus. No wonder.
So, but for you, what has been some of the more gratifying content to produce on the show, either because of the person you showcased or just because there was something about that issue that you felt was unique or special?
Oh man, there's so many. I've been agonizing over something else, which I know you're going to ask later. God, there's some. I think one that really sticks out was probably actually two people have passed away. Actually, I'm going to say Len Spire, who passed away several years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. He was a New York street photographer, also a intellectual property attorney. I think it was probably the personal connection we gained from that. I like his work a lot. And as he got older, he was in his mid-80s, and he could barely walk, and he started riding the bus, the M5 bus, which went the entire length of Manhattan. But he couldn't write the article, so I wrote it for him, with his photographs. But he was the same age as my father, who passed away quite a while ago, 30 years ago. So we just made a real nice personal connection. He was somebody who was, like I said, the same age as my father. I didn't really have anybody, in that generation. So it really wasn't the work, but it was just sort of the personal connection. He was a real mensch, and he just kind of gave me fatherly advice that I wasn't getting anymore. Mm. And that would have never happened had I not, had not met him through this magazine.
Oh, yeah. I share the feeling about a lot of guests.
Yeah.
And especially having done it as long as I have, they're photographers that have passed away. And, some far younger than they should have. And I'm sort of glad that the show sort of serves as a repository for their work, mm-hmm. regardless of whether they gained the kind of huge fame and notoriety, but that somehow, that their work sort of lives on. And I suspect that kind of plays a kind of role in terms of how you feel about your own work.
Yeah, I mean, actually, with what we're doing, we're creating history. In a way, we're preserving history. Another one similar was Glenn Capers.
Yeah, I knew Glenn. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. I mean, I liked him a lot. Just such an interesting guy. And then he passed away like 4 years ago. And I just had somebody email me a couple of days ago. He goes, I just listened to the podcast of Glenn Capers. Sorry to hear of his passing. And I said, yeah. So I'm glad that's out there and anybody can listen to it.
So my last question that I ask each guest is I ask them to recommend a photographer for our listeners to discover and explore, and it can be anyone, someone you've long admired or someone you've recently discovered. So who would that one photographer be and why?
Oh, man. Every time I listen to your show, I hear that question, and I think, boy, how do I answer that one? I've been agonizing this ever since you did the invite. So I'm going to say Michael Ruggiero, who he will be tomorrow. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but he's our June 2023 featured photographer. I've known him for several years, met him through Harvey Stein. Harvey has introduced me to many excellent photographers. And Mike, matter of fact, he moved from New York near me. He lives in the Charlottesville area now. And he's quite a guy. He's a couple years older than I am. He was influenced early by Cartier-Bresson, and he went to France to meet him, and he did back in his younger days. That story's in a podcast I just published with him, but I won't tell it myself. But his work, I really connect with his work. He does very long-term projects, like years and years, and he spent several years writing with truckers and doing a documentary series on truck drivers. And he did a lot of it in the 70s and the 80s, which I found very, very interesting. So he's done that with truckers. I mean, he went out, he was a chef, just retired not long ago. And then so during periods of time, he wouldn't work as a chef. He'd go out and do all these projects. And he rode with truckers. He'd go to some place and he'd connect with them at a truck stop. And then he'd go ride with them for hundreds of miles. And then he'd hook up another trucker and get back to his car. And really deep. I mean, you talk about being embedded. So he's done a lot of that kind of work. Very interesting. So I would say Mike Ruggiero. It's spelled Ruggiero. And I assume you probably want to put that in your show notes. So take a look at Mike's work, and I think you'll like it. I shoot with him personally. We've gone out a couple times. I've learned a ton from him yelling at me from, walking too much. I walk too much. And we stand in the same place and take photos of the same things. But that's it.
Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on 10 years and happy birthday.
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate your invite. I was thrilled.
A special thanks to Bob for joining us today. Check out and subscribe to Street Photography Magazine by visiting their website at streetphotographymagazine.com. And if you're a fan of our work here, we encourage you to write reviews on the podcast platform of your choice and share your favorite episodes on social networks, be it Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. I teach a street photography workshop through the Los Angeles Center of Photography, and right now it's a great time to sign up for mine or any of the great courses they offer. Through June 13th, they are promoting an early bird sale that offers 10 to 20% off select summer and fall courses. Find out more by visiting lacphoto.org. And if you'd like to support us financially, you can make contributions via PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the show notes. We've recently relaunched our newsletter, and by signing up on our website, you'll receive updates on everything related to TCF, as well as book recommendations, announcements for special events, and workshops from us and some of our guests. And if you're having trouble finding all our show episodes on your preferred podcast service, you can download the Candid Frame app from Apple iOS and Android. Thanks to your generosity, the app is free to download and use. No additional purchases are required. The Candid Frame audio engineer is Martin Taylor, who you can find at theothermartintaylor.com. Our show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker. And I'm Ibarian X, and this is The Candid Frame.